So last year at BrewCon, while I was on my usual scrounge for freebies, the lovely people at the Malt Miller stand hooked me up with some exciting new ingredients from Barth Haas, which included some Mosaic pure hop pellets and liquid hop extracts in the form of Citra Incognito and Citra Spectrum. So these have been sat in the fridge pretty much since then, because I wasn't 100% sure about how to go about utilizing these in a recipe and the brewing process itself. So for this video, before I get into actually brewing a beer, I thought I'd get in somebody who knows what they're talking about to explain what these products are all about and how we can utilize those during the brewing process and what the pros and cons of doing that are for us homebrewers. So let me know what you think about the video in the comments, and if you've got any other questions to follow up, chuck them in. But let's jump straight into the chat with James from the Malt Miller so we can find out all about these ingredients from Barth Haas. Right then, James, thank you very much for joining me on the channel. It's been really great sort of working with you to plan out doing this video and everything. And yeah, I'm looking forward to just picking your brain really on these products that you very kindly provided to help me out with brewing this beer. I'm sure most of the people who watch my channel are already subscribed to the Malt Miller and know all about you and what you're doing. And if you aren't, I'll put a link into the description, obviously. So get over there and subscribe to Malt Miller, because James is knocking out awesome content over there with himself and the rest of the team. And yeah, but for the benefit of people who haven't been watching those videos yet, do you want to just sort of say hello and who you are and what you do for the Malt Miller?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first off, Rich, thanks for inviting us onto your channel and the opportunity to do a collaboration with you and help you with a recipe and using some of these amazing advanced hop products. So first and foremost, cheers. You know, definitely need to do that. So I'm James. I work here at the Malt Miller and I look after operations, kind of the day-to-day stuff that happens within the team. But I'm also responsible for all of our content and marketing. So, you know, along with the other team here with Rob, Joe and Martin, we work closely together to kind of run all the day-to-day stuff in the business. But then, yeah, the marketing side of things is where I tend to spend a lot of my time. So if you haven't already, then do subscribe to our channel. I'm very proud of the content we're putting out and having the opportunity to work with people like yourself, Rich, on stuff like this.
Brilliant. So yeah, one of the reasons those videos are so good, because it's literally your job to make really good videos for the Malt Miller. So yeah, it must be awesome doing that and working for those guys. So
absolutely, it's definitely a privilege to be surrounded by amazing equipment, ingredients, and you know, homebrew fanatics all the time. You definitely pick stuff up and learn a huge amount along the way.
Yeah, it sounds great. So one of the really great companies that you get to work with at the Malt Miller are Barth Haas, and we're going to be talking about their products in a lot more detail shortly. But what have you been doing with those guys recently? Because I know that part of the new products has been like developing packaging and stuff like that. So how does that relationship work between Malt Miller and
so here at the Malt Miller, we are now a Barth Haas partner. So we're working really closely with Barth Haas X, based here in the UK. And we now repackage and distribute all of their small pack hops. So hop pellets and flowable hop products, such as the ones we're talking about today, Spectrum and Incognito. And we then package and distribute those out to other homebrew retailers all around Europe. On behalf of Barth Haas X. So yes, it's an amazing opportunity for us to be so heavily involved in the hop industry in this way, and to have the opportunity to really get hands-on with those products and understand them as best possible, and help other people use them as well.
Yeah, and hopefully that's what we're going to do a bit of today as well. So let's get into those products. So we'll start off with the BBC Pure Hop Pellets. Now, these are the ones that have been around a little bit longer, and I feel like I've got a little bit more of a handle on these. So I'll sort of say what I think they are, and then you can correct me or add anything else that needs to be put in there. So pure hop pellets, I guess, sit somewhere in between sort of standard T90s and what would be like cryo or Lupamax in the case of the Barth Haas version of that. And would I be right in saying that they're, rather than like a concentrated product, it's more of a like an enhanced product in terms of retaining the good stuff, like the, you know, the lupulin and the essential oils and all that kind of stuff, because of the way they actually press the pellets? Is that, am I on the right track, James?
Yeah, it is all to do with the way the hops are processed into their pellet form. I think what's important at the moment to note is that what you will start to see is the terminology of BBC will start to phase out, actually.
Yeah.
And what you will find is, as a home brewer, when you buy pure hop pellets, in the pack for pure hop pellets, you're going to have the best example of that hop that's available in that format, right, in pellet format. So what that will mean is for the hops that have previously been denoted as BBC, actually that version of that hop will be in the pure hop pellet bag. Okay.
Okay.
So the terminology of BBC will start to phase out, but you will be seeing them branded as pure hop pellets. Okay. And inside the bag, as I said, it will either be the a T90 or the most enriched possible T90 version. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
The best way to think about this product is that it is like a supercharged T90. Okay. So you've got a kind of a fuller flavor, stronger aroma, more hop intensity of that variety. And what that means for the brewer is that, first of all, you can maybe look at dialing back the amount that you use by around about 14-15%, or you can use the same amount and actually have a higher yield in terms of the aroma and flavor
out of it, right?
Yeah. They are softer, right? And when it comes to using the pellet, that actually makes a difference when it comes to dry hopping, because the minute you put a BBC pellet in as a dry hop, it just explodes, and that again just helps to enhance the presence within the finished beer. Okay. There is a difference in the way that they're created and processed. Ultimately, it's about slightly less of the hop matter, the vegetal matter that's in with the hop pellets. So more hop cone, less of leaf and that kind of stuff.
There's a temperature difference as well, is there? They do a bit colder.
Yeah, it is processed a little bit colder, which again helps to preserve the flavors and minimize oxidation, all of that kind of stuff. Okay.
Yeah. Cool.
And like I said, the best way to think of it is a supercharged T90.
Yeah. So the alpha acids generally stay the same, right? So it's that you don't need to scale it back in terms of bitterness that they might add in, but the amount of like oils and aromatics they add can obviously be bigger. So you can save yourself on that front. So let's get on to the sort of liquidized or extract hop products, starting with Incognito. So yeah, what is Incognito? How do you use it? I've had this little packet from back in October, sat in the fridge, and I've been looking at it, wondering what is this stuff and how do I actually use it? So tell me all about it, because as much as I knew about BBC hop or pure hop pellets, I know nothing really about Incognito at this point.
Okay. Well, Incognito is a Whirlpool edition. Okay. That's the first thing you need to think about with it. It is something that you add at Whirlpool, flame out, your hop stand period in your brew. And it is a pure hop product. That's extracted from hops. I don't know how they do it, and it's not something we're privy to as to how it is processed.
Is that a strictly need to know basis at this point? Right?
Yeah, definitely. But what happens is that because it's quite a if you've used Flex before, which is the bittering extract, it's very similar to that. It's quite thick. It's very, very viscous and sticky and that kind of stuff. So actually, what you need to do with it is warm it slightly before you add it at Whirlpool. So normally we would suggest put it into like a glass of warm water, about 40-50 degrees, just for a few minutes, just to get it a little bit more flowable. And then you add it to Whirlpool. And the best thing to do is also add a very small amount of hop pellet as well. And that could either be of the same variety or of a complementary variety, entirely up to you. And what happens is you pour it into the whirlpool and it distributes throughout the beer. Now, when you put the pellets in with it, what happens is the oil sticks to the pellets, which again helps it to distribute around the whirlpool and around your brew, without it sticking all over your brew kit, right?
Yeah.
Because there have been people that have struggled with it just sticking to their brew kit and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Actually, the recommendation is that you use it with a small amount of hot pellets when you whirlpool. Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense, because I think we talked before about me using Flex once, and the amount of residue that was kind of all around the kettle and pump and everything else afterwards was, for a tiny amount, was quite impressive. So yeah, if you can avoid that, that would definitely be good.
In terms of the dosing rate, we distribute Incognito in 16-gram pouches, okay? And that is equivalent to about 100 grams of hot pellets. So when you're building your recipes, you know, if you would normally put 100 grams of Citra in at your whirlpool, well, a 16-gram packet of Citra Incognito will do exactly the same job, okay?
Okay. So about 6-to-1 sort of equivalent ratio, yeah.
The really, really big benefit of this product is, first of all, its distribution throughout your brew when handled correctly. The aroma, the enhanced aroma that you then get from that, and the yield. You know, you think you put 100 grams of hot pellets in, well, that's going to soak up to a litre of your wort, potentially.
Yep.
There's none of that here. So if you're brewing a 20-litre batch, suddenly you've got an extra litre of yield potentially there, okay? And when we're talking about a homebrew scale, we'll add in 5-10% onto your yield. That's really quite important. You know, it's a couple of extra pints. So
yeah, well, the amount that, you know, ingredients and everything can potentially cost these days, especially if you're doing the big hoppy beers, you know, an extra litre or two is not to be sniffed at, for sure.
No, definitely. And I think for the kind of beer that you're planning to brew here, this would make a big difference.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so yeah, I think that's made it pretty clear what's going on with Incognito. Now, Spectrum is obviously in a similar kind of vein as far as being a liquid hop product. So a lot of what you've just said there, I guess, will apply to Spectrum. But I guess the main thing there is what kind of differentiates the two. So what makes Spectrum better for dry hopping versus Incognito, which is specifically for the whirlpool?
Yeah. Okay. So I think first and foremost, the distinction needs to be made around temperature. So the Incognito needs to be used in a hot liquid to disperse fully, right? It is an oil. It needs to obviously be at a temperature to really thoroughly disperse. Spectrum isn't, okay? So Spectrum is water soluble, which means that by adding it into, and it's still a pure hop product, but it is water soluble. So you, and again, we don't know how it's made, so apologies there.
That's fine.
But it's you can add it into dry hop at the usual time when you would dry hop, or you can add it straight into the keg when it comes to packaging. It's really up to you. Now, again, in terms of the hop presence and characteristics, it's identical to its T90 or, you know, pelletized version. There are a couple of things with it that, again, we need to be aware of when we're brewing with it. You can use it with pellets as well. You know, it's less of an issue that, you know, you don't need to use it with pellets for it to distribute in the same way that you do with Incognito. But you can use pellets at the same time. And actually, we've done that a few times. We've dry hopped with pellet and the Spectrum to, you know, to come up with a beer that we really want.
Yeah.
But again, it's that yield. Right. So if you're adding 100 grams, because 20 grams of Incognito, which again is the pouch size that we sell, is the equivalent of about 100 grams of pellets, you're looking at about another litre of yield that you've gained back.
It's basically zero losses because it just all dissolves in. So you're not getting any absorption, just straight into the liquid. Again, coming back to, like, you know, New England IPAs and stuff like that, nowadays you're looking at, you know, people doing 10, even 20 grams per litre dry hop. You can tell already that's going to be significant, right? You
can. There are some stipulations with Spectrum. Now, Barth Haas's recommendation is that you should not exceed 1 gram per litre, okay? And that is across any variety. So if you're planning to do like a blend and use maybe Citra and Mosaic Spectrum together, you would only want to use 10 grams of each, okay?
Yep.
In our studies, in our trials, when you go over that, you don't gain anything, and actually it can be a bit overpowering. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
So if you're going to go for a really big dry hop, using it as one of your dry hop additions, again, you're going to maximize your yield, but you're not going to overpower any of the other hops that you're adding in. Okay. The other thing as well with Spectrum is that there can be a tendency, because people think that it's water soluble, that you can just put it in and package your beer the next day and it's going to be fully distributed. It needs 2 to 3 days to really distribute throughout the beer. So don't add it and then try your beer later on that day and be disappointed, because it's going to take a few days to disperse. You've got to remember that we're going to be putting it into beer that's probably going to already be cooler. So therefore it is going to take some time to dissolve and really work its way around the vessel and the batch of beer before you package it.
Okay, that will make sense. So yeah, with the information sheet, which I had a quick browse on for Spectrum, it did mention about the point that you add it into the fermentation affecting the flavor profile as well. So a little bit earlier can help to get more fruity flavors out of it. Is that correct?
Yeah, you can. I think, again, it's trial and error for everybody, you know. I mean, I'm sure, like you, Rich, you've tried putting your dry hops in at loads of different points within fermentation, right the way from maybe like right at the beginning of fermentation all the way through to when you've hit final gravity and beyond. It's the same with Spectrum. You can use it at any point. Interestingly, when you do use it earlier on, it is going to disperse fully and then going to have the opportunity to interact with the active fermentation. So, you know, and we know that biotransformation can happen with pellets. It's still early to say whether it's biotransformation that's happening when you do that with Spectrum, but you do get some slightly different flavor profiles show up.
Have you guys tried it out at different points yourselves at Malt Miller, or?
Yeah, we have. I mean, we've probably only put it into one beer when it's been like a few days before the end of fermentation's finished, and there was pellets that went in with that as well. It was actually the beer that you tried at BrewCon when we were doing the kind of take on our conflux recipe from Jimmy at Unity, but replacing as much as we could of the hops, the hop pellets, the T90s, with these products. And that bit where you tried it, it was fantastic.
It was a fruity little number, so that certainly didn't do any harm in that case, for sure. Okay, so otherwise benefits we've talked about, you know, yield and everything else, so it's very similar to Incognito in that respect. Where else can people sort of learn more information about Spectrum and Incognito and just these hop products in general? Have you got other resources on the website and stuff that they can find for these?
So there's information on all the product pages for us. They could visit. They can visit Barth Haas's website as well. There's a huge amount of information on there. We've also started to put some videos out with using these products. So have a look on our YouTube channel as well.
Brilliant. Yeah. Okay. So that's the sort of lowdown on what these products do. Let's have a quick look at the recipe that we kind of talked about together and how we're going to put these to use in that. Now, as soon as I said Citra and Mosaic to you, you sort of went, we'll look at that Alchemist. Well, we actually looked at the wrong recipe initially, but after we figured out which one it was you wanted, Focal Banger was the one that we found a clone recipe for off of your website. And then we've sort of looked at that as the basis for that. So I've never actually tried the original. Have you tried the original Focal Banger?
I am very fortunate enough to say that I have. Yeah, I've got a good friend that visits the US 2 or 3 times a year, and he always brings me back beers. And actually, he was the person that really started my craft beer journey on an afternoon barbecue at my house, where he brought a suitcase full of things like Bell's Two Hearted, a bottle of Pliny, You know,
Nice.
just sculpin, just loads of amazing classic American craft beers. And last year he sent me a can of Heady Topper and a can of Focal Banger, and they were both absolutely outstanding.
I hope you got a Christmas card this year, because that's
oh yeah, definitely.
that's a good friend to have for sure.
Yeah, he's a home brewer as well, so you know, it's a two-way street.
Awesome. Now, we did say that actually one beer that's a lot of people in the UK might have tried recently that was actually kind of based around the Focal Banger, or inspired by Focal Banger itself, was the Siren Time Hops Citra and Mosaic beer, and that was one that I did try. So when I realized that was kind of the closest equivalent to that I might have had, I was more than up for using this as the basis of the recipe. I'll put a link to the recipe in the description for this video. There is going to be a follow-up where I actually brew it, and obviously we're going to do a tasting, and hopefully if it doesn't end up a complete disaster, I'll be getting you and maybe some of the other Malt Miller guys to taste it as well. But what we're looking at essentially is a big, juicy New England IPA type recipe, as you'd expect when we've been talking about the benefits of these types of beers, coming in at about 6.8%, and we're loading it up with Citra and Mosaic. Essentially, it's got a malt bill including pale malt, lager malt, lots of oats, and there's a bit of malted dextrin in there as well. So the bit we want to kind of focus on really is how we've applied the products we've just been talking about to this recipe, in terms of sort of, you know, adjusting for replacing hop pellets and things like that. So you've got the recipe there as well, haven't you, James? So
I have, yeah. And
have I done anything wrong? Is it all okay?
You've definitely not done anything wrong. If anything, I'm looking at it saying, wow, this is going to be absolutely amazing.
Fingers crossed.
Hop additions look pretty much spot on. One thing we talked initially about was just maybe taking some of your boil additions down and applying them more in the whirlpool, which I know you've had a look at already, and already starting to think about how, because that beer, it's perfectly balanced for me in terms of bitterness, juiciness, and drinkability. So there's that heady mix that you have there, where your bitterness isn't too high, it's not so sweet that it's cloying, and the hop presence really sings through those two elements working in balance, which again, I think by adding that little bit of maltodextrin, you're really working to add that body there, and that nice kind of juiciness that you expect, pillowy kind of thing going on. But yeah, I think you've got a huge hop stand going on, which I think you've got 100 grams of pellets and some Citra Incognito going into your whirlpool, which that's huge. That's going to really punch the aroma.
So effectively, with the 15-gram pack, as we said before, that's equivalent to 100 grams. So it's kind of a 200-gram effective total in the whirlpool. Which that's pretty big. I don't think I've done a whirlpool that big yet. So that'll be. But as we said, we're not going to lose as much to it, because it's actually hop pellet wise, there's only 100 grams going in, so that's gonna be good for that. And
it's the same on the dry hop as well. You're using the Mosaic pellets and the Citra Spectrum, that's gonna again just completely layer on top in a very heady way that presence that you get from those two hops.
Okay, great. So we're combining a little bit of pellets in both cases with the extract, and that should help, particularly with the Incognito, as far as sort of binding onto the pellets, as you said. With the Spectrum, that's not as much of an issue, but obviously we don't want to be overdosing just with Spectrum on its own. So again, we're kind of sort of sticking within the guidelines there. Now, in this recipe, we are just putting the whole quantity of each of those in one go. One thing that's just occurred to me there is, if people are wanting to maybe divide it up between different editions or things like that, that's possible, right? It's just maybe a case of working out how you're going to separate and weigh out the Incognito or the Spectrum while you're doing that. So any recommendations on that at all? Or
I mean, with remembering that Incognito is a Whirlpool edition, you're going to use all of that predominantly in one hit.
Sorry, yeah, not for the Incognito, but
for Spectrum, I mean, you could try and weigh it out, or you could use a syringe. Actually, in the pouches, it's quite easy to segment it out just using your fingers, because it's just like a like a little pillow pouch type thing. You can segment it out roughly with your fingers, and then once you're done, because if you're going to use the rest of it within a day or two to dry hop again, just roll the top down, put one of those like clip lock bag clips over the top, and put it back in the fridge. It'll be fine for a couple of days. It's not a problem.
Yeah, so the scenario there could be if you were doing like some of it for an early or active fermentation dry hop, and then some for later on. So it's still possible to do that, because you might be using like 2 varieties and you want to put a bit of both in at the, during fermentation, a bit of both at the end, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Could be something that we're doing. And on this recipe, as far as the Spectrum going in slightly earlier, I have set it up on the recipe so it's going to be an active fermentation dry hop with the Spectrum, and then we're going in with a little bit more of the mosaic pellets later on. So I've put day 3 on the recipe for now, but I'll obviously see how the fermentation's progressing and things like that.
Are you sorry, Rich, are you planning to ferment under pressure?
I am not planning on fermenting under pressure for this one, and one of the reasons for that is because you've also sent me a really nice new yeast to try out with this beer, which is the Imperial Capri yeast, which is, if I'm right, this is one of their new kind of hybridized yeasts, and it's their juice yeast, which is equivalent to London Ale Free, crossed with one of the fruity quake yeasts. Is it?
Yes. Loki.
Loki, yes. So have you had a chance to brew with that one already, James? What can I expect?
Okay, so no, I've not used Capri personally. However, we've got a customer called Lance, Doorstep Brewing, who has brewed with it, and his results were fantastic. It's important to note that Capri isn't a hybrid, it's actually a blend of the two yeasts. So Imperial have worked on the right ratios of those two yeasts together to produce Capri, and it is fantastic. It is an absolute juice bomb. Really, really good.
I mean, it sounds like a good choice for this sort of beer, and hopefully, I mean, it's looking like it's going to be great just based on the hop schedule. If we add a big fruity yeast on top of that with lots of character, then hopefully the only limiting factor is going to be my brewing, but we'll see how it goes.
I'm sure that's not going to be a detracting factor in this at all, Rich.
Well, yeah, fingers crossed. I feel like the pressure's on now. I've got to nail this one and make sure it comes out all right. But so I think that's everything. Unless you can think of anything else that we need to add in there, James.
No, I think the recipe looks really solid, solid, actually. I love the way you're trying to approach layering the hop flavors throughout the process and incorporating these enhanced products through that journey as well. The malt bill looks fantastic. The yeast choice we know will work brilliantly with the recipe. And it's a great, the Alchemists obviously are an inspiration to so many brewers and home brewers out there that I think this will be such an interesting beer to try, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how it turns out.
Excellent. Well, thanks again, and I'm really looking forward to actually getting into the brewery and like working with these products and seeing what they're like, because it's it's kind of stepping out of the comfort zone a little bit from working with a standard product like T90s for so long, and this is something a little bit different. Hopefully, as we've talked about, it's not going to make it any more difficult. In fact, in some ways, it's going to make it potentially easier. But it's been great to get some guidance from you on how to do it properly and make the best use of these. So thanks again, and hopefully next time you hear from me, it will be to tell you about how well the brew's gone and that there's going to be some beer on the way to you.
I can't wait. I'm really looking forward to it. Good luck with the brew day. All right.
Brilliant. Cheers.
I'm the dude. So that's what you call me, that or his dudeness or duder or, El Duderino if you're not into the whole brevity thing.